Spirit tokens or soul tokens? Let's theorize about that. Hey Cardfighters, today I want to do a more theory craft video where we discuss different concept for game designs or game mechanic designs that could be implemented later down the road, if any, with the upcoming supports of different clans. And today I want to take a more approach at the token system that was introduced with the Ultra Rare collection with the introduction of plant tokens for Neo Nectar, and take a look at them, how we might incorporate them in different mechanics and different clans to help them become better at what they're supposed to do, but still in a fair sense of how that clan is supposed to function. For those who don't know what plant tokens are, these are a special kind of cards that Neo Nectar has access to that can be able to fill out the field with a specific kind of unit. And in this case, plant tokens are grade 0 that have boost, 5k power, and a critical of 1. And you can only get access to them if a certain unit with a specific skill calls one of these, or better stated, create one of these units. And just like gift markers, they aren't in your main deck, they are in somewhat your side deck, that whenever one is called, you pick it from your side deck, place it on the field, and whenever that unit is destroyed or leaves the field, it's not going to go to the drop zone or to the soul or to the hand. It immediately goes back to the extra deck, face down, so you can reuse it just like how you can reuse protect gift markers. Thanks to this plant token mechanic, Neo Nectar feels a lot different than most Force clans that just superior call, because without it, it's basically the same as what Royal Paladin does with the superior calling, with how their Cecilia VR works. And you might think, well, if we're incorporating this system to another clan, it's basically just rehashing the same mechanic, and with standard you usually want to have all these different mechanics for different clans, but we know that Bushiroad does repeat some same mechanics, but in a little different way, so it feels unique. A good example of that is the gauge mechanic that we see with Tachikaze, as well as in Genesis with their godly equip gauge for the Artemis Raiche. And although they are technically the same thing, they do feel quite different in the way that they are used and what you do with it. And I think if they are going to incorporate more tokens in the game, they could take this approach and make them feel different enough that you do not really see them, oh, it's just a generic token mechanic. No, it features and functions a different thing in that specific deck or clan. So the token system that I came up with was a token system for Grand Blue and for Dark Irregulars. Ironically, the more underwhelming protect clans of the current meta, although Dark Irregulars did got some significant boost power in their latest support set for Violence Deleter, if they incorporate this token system, it might push them to a more consistent good level, which can then combat any kind of meta that's then active at the time. And we all know what the status of Grand Blue is. It's basically non-existent right now, and I think this token mechanic might push them into the realm where they are significant. But the reason why they aren't meta right now is the fact that their mechanic relies on, in Dark Irregular's case, to soul charge a lot of cards to meet the requirement of certain cards that need a certain amount of cards in their soul. And in the same case for Grand Blue, this is basically the same, but instead they need to go in the soul, they need to be in a drop zone. You need a certain amount of cards in your drop zone to activate these skills. And what that means is that in your early game, you're basically only focusing on that point to get that thing up to the numbers that you want to. And then later in the stages in the game, basically when your second grade free turn, or ideally on your first grade free turn, you can go with all your skills and active and start putting out pressure. If you do it any later, it might be too late. But the problem that also arises with these mechanics is that they are using cards from their deck and accelerate more cards out of their deck to get these cards into that respective zone. And that implies that these clans might have an issue with deck out. And because they are also protect clans, that even signifies it even more, as those matches tend to go on longer, as protect decks tend to be stronger the later the game is progressing. And when you combine that with a mechanic that focus on putting more cards from the deck into a specific zone to activate some requirements for skills, yeah, you're not going off on a good foot right there. So the idea to combat that is to incorporate a token mechanic that basically fulfills the idea of filling that specific zone with non-deck cards. How you can picture it is basically a plant token that instead goes to the field on a Vanguard circle. It goes to the respective zone. So you have a grade 0 token, a soul token for Dark Regulars, that goes into the soul whenever a certain card is called. So a good example of this is Prisoner Beast. Its skill is when placed you can soul charge a card, but it could also state when placed put a soul token into your soul. So this way you fill your soul, but at the same time you're not minusing on your deck as much as you used to do in the past. And you can incorporate this with many kinds of skills. And sure, there are cards that you want to have in your souls, because for Dantarian, basically, you want to have grade 2s in your soul, and you have certain grade 3s that you also want in your soul for No Life King. But at the same time, you can also add some non-soul charge card into your deck to help with the issue of not going deck out as fast as in some cases you basically are, as Dantarian can go very quickly through his soul. And yes, you have cards like Dark Soul Conductor that can combat that in some kind of way, but if you have these tokens, you can prolong that game state as long as possible so you can go into your late game kill turns. And I'm not suggesting that they should solely revolve around this token mechanic, but they could make an archetype that does focus on these tokens. So it doesn't really matter what kind of cards you have in your soul, it's just about the numbers. And with such tokens, you could make them count as 1, but you could also maybe have special tokens that could count as 2, or just have a card that puts a number of tokens into the soul, so you can ramp up the soul numbers to numbers we could never ever imagine, because we are limited to the 50 cards deck and basically 49 as you are having starter, and because you have an opening sense, the highest number probably would be around 30 if you're lucky, and with these tokens that can go a lot higher. And this whole argument can be exactly the same for Grand Blue. And instead of soul tokens, they could have drop zone tokens or spirit tokens, as Grand Blue is working with the undead and calling creatures from the dead. So I think the name spirit token would make more sense. And it's basically the same argument for them as, sure, you want to have specific cards in your drop zone to superior call them, but at some point in the game, or at some stages in the game, it doesn't really matter what you have in your drop zone, but you just want to have more cards for something like a Skull Dragon, for example. And they could also make an archetype reliant on it, because the main thing you should take away from this is this token mechanic is not gonna replace the current decks. It's maybe either supporting some cards like Skull Dragon, for example, or even No Life King, as that one becomes more powerful the more cards are in the soul. But it could also be a new archetype that relies on them. Maybe, say, 7 Seas for Grand Blue focuses on this token mechanic. Or you have Amon for Dark Regulars that focuses more on these soul tokens. And for Amon that makes a lot of sense, as that archetype in the past really relied on as much cards in your soul as possible, and you didn't really care what kind of cards were in your soul. These you could make some more interesting things and also combat the issue that these two protect decks have from day one, and that's the fact that they go deck out. And no matter what, they tend to go deck out because of their mechanic and because the inherity of their marker they got. Protect marker plus a deck milling mechanic doesn't really match well. Something as Great Nature with their deck milling isn't really that an issue, as seen as they are an Excel deck, and Excel deck tends to finish games very quickly, and as seen as how fast Great Nature can, it makes a lot of sense. But that's basically the concept of these tokens for potentially Grand Blue or Dark Regulars. And it would be very interesting if Grand Blue with their new support wave might get something like this. I'm not saying it will, it's basically a random thought that I have, and it makes an interesting discussion about a potential future game mechanic, as it doesn't really sound weird. If I made this statement a year ago, it might did, because tokens weren't a thing in Vanguard, but because of the plant tokens in Neo Nectar, this is a whole new playing field right now, as it might mean that Bushiroad is very comfortable in using tokens, and depending on how successful Neo Nectar was, and in my opinion it was very successful, they might do it again for a different clan. As seen as how each and every clan is starting to get a very unique playstyle with a very unique mechanic, and seen as Grand Blue and Dark Raggers didn't really got that now. Sure, they have their soul mechanic and the dropshot mechanic they always had, and that makes them unique, but it still doesn't feel something like Equip Gauge for Tachikaze, or Godly Equip Gauge for Genesis, or the whole new Bind Zone Stride mechanic for Gear Chronicle. Those feel a little bit more special. So we might get that one in the future. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these token mechanics. Do you think they are sounding pretty legit, or they might sound interesting to you? Or do you have a different kind of potential token mechanic for a different clan? Because the possibilities are endless in this sense, but I feel that they should be used in more in a resource term. And for these two clans, it absolutely makes sense if they ever should incorporate something like this, and I think the time for it is perfect right now, as they could introduce a new archetype or a new old archetype with this mechanic. It makes absolutely sense. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. And as always, I want to thank my supporters over at Patreon, Priest and John Edmondson. You guys are amazing supporting me in this endeavor. If you guys also want to support me on Patreon, then go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and start today. There's gonna be a lot of more content over at the Patreon page exclusive for Patreon. So if you're interested in more Vanguard talk, discussions and card analysis, then head on over to there and become a patron today. Also, we're almost about to hit the 5K subscriber mark on the channel, which means I'm gonna do a special 5K subscriber Q&A where you can ask any kind of question and I'm gonna answer them on video. It might be something about Vanguard rules, maybe something more personal. It could also be something besides Vanguard, maybe it's something on YouTube or anything. Just ask me down in the comments down below, or go to my Twitter at Mr. Timeleap and ask me there with the hashtag #AskMrTimeleap, and you might get your question featured in the upcoming 5K subscriber special video that would be uploaded somewhere during next week. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap, and I see you guys in the next one.